Welcome to Music as a Day Job, brought to you by the Qoncert app, which is an artist accelerator that helps artists go from opener to headliner and gives the fan the best experience in independent entertainment. And this Music as a Day Job once again, where you can learn how to make music into a day job. And I'm your host, also the CEO of Qoncert, Sean. Um, this is the main question of the day, which is the what the whole podcast is about. And so I just want to give a little example of how to actually pull this off so people can see the numbers and start visualizing a blueprint of how they can be successful. So how to make music a full-time job. Now, usually we talk about different ways, different streams of income, all that, all the above. And this time I just want to break it down just into some numbers so you guys can kind of like start strategizing and so you can see that it's possible that you're capable of actually pulling this off the way I would have, well, the way I did pull it off, but the way I think is the easiest route to pull it off versus other routes that people take on. Because I actually heard a little podcast the other day where a gentleman talked about making a lot of money from streams, and he broke down how many streams he was actually pulling off per month and how many he had to pull off per day, and it was somewhere like, it was just crazy numbers. So then I was kind of like, ugh, like, even though the numbers broke down and it made sense, like to be like, hey, if I hit this many numbers of plays per day and I have this many pieces of content to do it, and so each piece of content has to get this many per day, and I do promotions for each, and I run like I basically like do ads on them and go from there. It made sense, but at the same space, like it was like in the 600,000s and stuff like that, and I was just kind of like, yo, like I don't know if I would have the patience to actually pull that off in that format. So then to me, I always base mine off of shows. So let's go with what the cost of living, the average cost of living in America is $40,000 a year. So if that's the average cost of living, let's say per month you have to make around $3,500. The easiest way is to say get yourself to a point where you're worth $500 per city in 7 markets. So in 7 markets, you're at least worth $500. Now, to back out of that is saying that $500 is basically, in my system, $500 is like you have 100 fans. So 100 fans is, that's where you would make, you basically would be able to move 100 tickets in 7 cities. So a easier route to this is to say that I would say go with the approach of saying you have 100 fans in 5 markets, and then you basically then do $200 of merch per night. So if you're looking at $200 in merch, that means you're selling probably like 2 to 3 hoodies, a couple t-shirts, and a hat or two. And then that can kind of basically even you out to make the other numbers. So I would focus more on being in 5 markets and say, hey, I'm gonna be strong in 5 markets, and I have at least 100 fans in 5 markets. So then I'm worth around $500. Now, see, this idea works in my mind because I actually know how much someone's worth based on how much they bring in and everything like that, and what can be created off of them. Every promoter is not going to just be like, yeah, I'll pay this person $500 because they bring 100 people. They're not going to see it in that. A lot of them won't see it in that manner. So then they won't pay you $500 because they'll see you as a local artist, and they'll just say, hey, I'm not paying them $500. They need to just come perform or whatever like that. And so a lot of them won't see that idea. And then some of the ways some promoters actually do the numbers. So like, let's say like a lot of people get caught up in the idea of, I'll hear people be like, oh, you can keep $2 a ticket. You can keep $2 a ticket of all the tickets you sell. So if you sold 100, you'd only make $200. But see, the logic of people wanting instant gratification makes them say, hey, I'll take that deal instead of what the deal is that I've built in Qoncert. In Qoncert, the idea is based off of after you hit your 50, then you make $10 a ticket because then you would be at a real headliner status. So then I try to make it so people don't become what happens is when you pay all artists, they end up getting content. Like this is the weirdest thing. It's anyone in this world. Once people have a constant where they can just, like they don't have anything to work for, they don't have any goals put. What happens is then when the artists that don't do any work at all have no separation from the artists that work their asses off, what happens is they then become one and the same. And then the people who work hard go like, well, hey, if I'm going to make the same amount as the person who doesn't work hard, or I'm gonna make near the amount as the person who doesn't work hard, then why would I do this? And see, that's the everyone gets the participation award, which I hate that idea of the participation award. So I always say after 50 tickets, then you make your 10 a ticket. Now, if you're an opener after 30 tickets, you can make your 10 a ticket. But if you're a headliner, you're after 50 tickets because then you get all the promotion that a headliner gets. You got your name on the building. You got everything that's pushing you and propelling you and the momentum to build you up to get to another city, to get you into bigger shows, to get you into everything. So with that idea, after 50, if you're making 10 a ticket at 100 tickets, you would then make $500. So with my idea like that, then you were looking at going into 5 markets, so you can end up making $2,500. And then on the other end, you want to supplement $1,000 in merch, saying that in those 5 markets, you're at least going to sell $200 of merch each night, which, as I said, 2 hoodies, maybe a couple t-shirts and a hat. So that's what you're looking to try to sell. So I always tell people, if you're going to do the merch, you got to get off stage and you got to go sell it yourself. Some people have people they can actually sell, but one of the best sells is if you go and interact with the fans, because what happens is those become fans forever because you actually got off the stage, interacted with them, had fun with them, kicked it with them, did all that, and then so they love you forever. So they're more likely gonna buy more merch and come to more shows after that. So if you're in Colorado, now that's where we are currently. We're in Colorado. So once we get to other cities, as I said, artists get on here, start getting your name onto the app and get everybody you know so I can get into these other states and start creating this for you guys too. In Colorado, if I'm looking at 5 markets, I'm looking at Denver, Springs, Greeley, Grand Junction, and probably Fort Collins. If I'm looking at 7, I'm gonna add Boulder and Pueblo to that. And that's where I would tour, basically. So saying that your tour is in just one state, you can do this in your own state. And a lot of states have probably way more stops than Colorado does. So, but in Colorado, I just named 7 places that you could pull this off at. And so if you're looking at it from that idea, you're going like, okay, well, I get 100 fans in each of these places. And that will be your goal. It's just 100 fans in each of these places. Now, once you start getting bigger, of course, like as long as you're doing the same rotation of how you're gathering fans, of course, in other places, you're going to end up with more fans. So like, let's say you have 200 fans in Denver and then you have 100 fans over here and then like you have 300 fans over there. Like, so then this starts changing, of course, what level of income you're making. So if you're doing bigger shows, of course, that you might make less money because you're taking on bigger venues. So you're taking on higher venue costs. In my scenario, I try to keep it very similar. So then unless you're doing big venues, 1,000-person seaters and up, then yes, that's going to change how many tickets, of course, that need to be moved. But that also changes the perception of you as an artist. So what you're moving the tickets for is to change that perception so you can start getting into these bigger venues yourself, without having to use a national or someone else to get into the venue. You can then get the venues, you can start getting into the venues and being a headliner yourself in those places. So in the medium-sized places, which are 300 to 500, that's where this this blueprint, the original blueprint I told you, works. Inside the Qoncert idea is basically saying these 300 to maybe even 700 person venues. If I'm doing 100, if I'm putting 100 people in there myself, then of course I'm worth around $500. And then when I get to around 150, then I'm worth $1,000. And $1,000 a night is good money, because you got to think a lot of artists that are on record labels don't make $1,000 a night. Once they pay out everything, and they pay out all the people who need to be paid out, and they pay for their travel and all that extra stuff, it's not $1,000 a night. So when you look at it from where you're standing and you say, hey, I'm going to places that I can actually get to, that I can do my own transportation to, and I only have to have like a quarter tank of gas and stuff like that and food tonight, and I'm going in places that I can come back home and I can sleep back at home, then you're actually making the money yourself, and that's how you do it. People always think, hey, I got to get to this other state and everything like that, and yeah, well, you got to pay the cost, you got to pay the expenses, and now the expenses become transportation, flights, hotels, all this extra stuff, staying there for more than 1 day, so you have to eat way more times out, everything like that. So then you got to think of it in a way where you can actually maximize the amount of money you're making. So that's how you end up making it a full-time job, is because you're able to maximize those things by doing less in smaller areas. So taking a smaller area and not reaching out too far. You're just reaching out into places that are next to you and going like, okay, well, if I pick these places that are all 40 to 50 miles away from me right now, and of course my own city, then I'm good. And that's how I start building it. And I get to the point where, as I said, 100 fans in each city. I have 100 fans in each city. I'm going to do 5 cities plus some merch, or I'm going to do 7 cities and have 100 fans in each of the 7 cities. Now that's the way you start to make music a full-time job.